everyone and welcome back to the garden. Today I'm taking you along with me while I complete some garden jobs. And one of them being probably one of the most important things a gardener can do, but I'll get to that later. But first, we have been having some extreme weather in Australia and there is a heat wave this week, so I'm trying to power through a bunch of jobs because there is no way I'll be gardening this week. So I'm trying to cram everything into one day. The temperature this week is going to get up to about 37 degrees Celsius, which is about 99 degrees Fahrenheit. And the sun and humidity can be punishing for me and the plants. But we've recently had a few intense storms and my shade cloth luckily did survive, but it has become a bit loose, so the first job is fixing that up. I'm just temporarily using clothesline pegs, but the weather has flung them God knows where, so I'll probably be finding them scattered throughout the garden all week. A quick update on the garden though, the giant new garden bed has now been painted. Even though it doesn't look like it, it's kind of like a salmon color. In my other garden beds, everything is looking very lush thanks to the shade cloth and is slowly becoming productive. My cucumber chain experiment sadly did not survive the intense storm. It also is not surviving the caterpillars, so I'm just trialing just a basic trellis with a string for some of my other cucumber seedlings to see how it goes. My other wood trellis though did get knocked down in the storm, but luckily the cucamelons I'm growing are holding it all together. Got another casualty from the storm. That would have been a beautiful cosmos, but I'll chop it up and put it back into the garden. My new trellis archway is looking so good. Surprisingly, everything is growing really well, even though there's not much soil in this bed. It's mostly just sticks and mulch. I'm currently growing a tromboncino on the trellis, and now I'm getting a bit nervous because it is taking over and showing signs of several fruit. And this vegetable grows up to about 1 meter long, so it's gonna be fun to see what happens. I'm probably gonna have way too many, but it'll be interesting to see it hanging off the trellis. In my food forest, my zinnias are starting to flower and it looks beautiful. I also lost a few trellises in the storm, but I think it's time to finally harvest my tromboncino. I don't know why I'm obsessed with growing these at the moment, and this is my very first one and I think it turned out pretty good. I'm very proud of it. But one of my most important tasks for the day is improving the soil, especially in these new garden beds. So to keep costs down, I originally filled the garden beds with mostly old sticks and branches and used aged wood mulch to fill the bed. So I wanted to check on how the soil is performing in my beds before I get started. In these new beds, you can see the mulch is already starting to break down, but it's still quite crumbly and it won't be providing enough nutrients for the plants. When you compare it to the soil in my other garden beds, they are looking a lot better. They're also retaining a lot more moisture and it's a lot darker in color, which is essentially what you want. Looking pretty good, but it's definitely not perfect. I didn't spot any worms, which is usually a good indicator of good soil, and I just know the soil in this bed needs a lot of improvement because I only added like a couple of cheapy potting soil mixes, so I know it's not going to be good. And that brings me to compost. Compost is like gold for your garden and you can make it yourself. I do have a little compost bin, but compost takes time and I'm impatient. But for now, the black soldier fly larvae are doing their job at breaking down my old food scraps, which is exactly what you want in your compost. And once it's all broken down, it'll look like soil and I can add it to my garden beds and return those nutrients back to the earth. But until then, I have these. Now, I do love to do things on a budget. So when I saw these mushroom compost bags for $5 each, I jumped on the opportunity. Mushroom compost is the substrate that they use to grow mushroom in, which can usually be a mixture of like hay or sawdust or manure or just a bunch of things that plants like. So when mushroom growers are finished growing their batch, they basically just sell off the excess for cheap. So you can check Facebook Marketplace to see if anyone local is selling any. And if you wanted to, you can even leave the bags in a dark, moist area, and you may even get some extra mushrooms from it. So today I'm using this mushroom compost to improve the soil in my garden beds and to help add more nutrients. When I first started gardening, I think like a lot of people, I just added potting mix, planted some seeds, and thought that was it. But over time, I've started to learn how important the soil is to the success of your vegetable garden. While a lot of potting mix usually has nutrients added, growing vegetables tends to deplete those nutrients over time. So by adding compost, you're adding organic matter back into the soil and nutrients from existing fruit and plants that has already been broken down by microorganisms. So it's like a perfect natural loop system, and usually nature would replicate this by just allowing plants to die and rot away where they were, but composting is like a sped up cheat system, I guess. Now, I don't pretend to act like a pro about this stuff or anything like that. I just know soil is important and can see how important soil is through my own experiences. And if you want better soil, you gotta add compost. But you can also add things like fertilizers. So I realized I was making a big mess carrying the mushroom compost all over my yard, so decided it might be better to put the compost into a bucket and then loosen it up a bit and then sprinkle it on the garden beds. Then I thought, why not shoot two birds with one stone, and why not add fertilizer in to save a job later? I use a product called Organic Extra, and it's like pellets of mixed blood and bone, on fish meal and seaweed and manure, and a bunch of stuff the plants love. And yes, it does stink. So I add a few handfuls of it to my compost mix and then sprinkle it around all over the garden beds. By this time though, it was like 10 a.m. and it was getting bloody hot. So I chilled out under the mango tree to prep the mix a bit, and also had a little friend to help out as well. The joys of an anxious, needy dog. I finished adding the compost and fertilizer mix to all my bed, and it was getting way too hot. After some lunch and a sneaky swim, I then got back out in the garden to do some painting jobs. I upgraded my letterbox, which was an old milk can, so I wanted to spray it to give it a new life. And of course, it's not an Aussie gardening video without a spider jump scare. Spider. I don't know where this guy came from, but he jumped into the letterbox. I then had to try and carefully get him out. I've gone for a purple on the milk can, and my plan is to add bamboo sticks to create a native beehive, but I'll share more about that in a future video. I also tried spray painting these secondhand raised garden beds, but it was a fail. The spray painting got all runny and I ran out halfway through, so I've learned to not use spray paint again unless it's on a metal material, but oh well. So I went to the markets on the weekend and got some seedlings. I got some zucchini because all my zucchinis have died, and I know these can like get a bit much and like just take over, but mine has not. So I think I bought 6. Then got some Lebanese cucumbers. I love cucumber, but a lot of my cucumbers hasn't been successful yet. So I'm gonna try and grow these on the big new archway because a lot of plants are loving that spot. So I'm hoping these will take off there. Also got a gold nugget pumpkin, which is another variety of like really tiny pumpkins because I love the other ones, so why not have lots of cute little pumpkins. Then I got some herbs. This is sweet marjoram, which is good for, I think, Mexican cooking. So I've heard it's good, don't really know how to use it. And also got some lemon balm. I'm really into growing teas, like plants for teas at the moment, and I heard this one's good and it smells delicious. Then I got some raspberries. I've been wanting to grow raspberries for a very long time, but I know they kind of can take over, so I needed like a dedicated raised garden bed for them, which is the one I just spray painted. So I got 3 of these to grow in that bed, and hopefully soon I'll have raspberries. I then planted out some of my new seedlings, and eventually there was enough shade in the garden to continue what I was doing, and that was improving my soil. But there was another delay. You won't believe what happened. I'm so glad I got this on camera. I was carrying out my watering can when all of a sudden I discovered a giant spider on the side of the watering can. Now, I hate living up to the stereotype that Australia is full of spiders, but this video so far hasn't been helping. I'm way less squeamish about spiders than I used to be, but they're still creepy, especially if they get on you. I'm not a fan. But this one is a huntsman, and they are totally harmless, and they're also good for your garden because they eat annoying bugs like mosquitoes and flies. But I just don't want him anywhere near me. So I spend the next 20 minutes trying to get him away. He's so fast. Oh, he jumped. And funnily enough, a butcher bird did rock up, but the spider had already hidden himself. But sadly, he wasn't able to find him. But oh well, back to whatever I was doing. And that was worm tea. I got gifted some worm tea from a local, and worm tea is basically worm poop in water. And once diluted, it's again great fertilizer for the garden. So I added a splash to my watering can and watered my garden with it. Now with all this composting and fertilizers, you absolutely don't need to do as much as me. People say you should compost once or twice a year and fertilize about once a month. But since my garden beds are new and I saved money by not investing in potting mix and using mulch instead, this for me is cheaper and I personally think is more beneficial for the soil. But only time will tell. Hopefully I will soon have a healthy and very productive garden, because it can't only look good, it also has to grow good too. But thanks for watching this video and following me along on some chill garden jobs. I'm trying to put out weekly videos, but this weather has other plans. So make sure to subscribe to catch them and also to follow my Instagram to see what I get up to during the week. And I'll see you next time. Bye!